Hey folks, good morning. Welcome in. It's a beautiful day. Glad you are with us. I won't belabor the time. Let's do our word confession. Let's hold our Bibles up. Say it together. I am the result, divine intention. I'm created for divine interaction. Therefore, I expect divine interruption. The life that I now live will function according to God's place, God's process, God's plan, and God's process. I am confident that what He has started, He will finish. So we know we've been in this discussion, year 2021, the Apostles' Doctrine. We've been talking specifically about foundations. And the conversation we've been having recently has been built from Psalms 82 and Isaiah 58:12. And I believe that it's just good for us to keep that in front of us. So I'm going to read both of these passages real quickly. Psalms 82. God stands in the congregation of the mighty. He judges among the gods. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Selah. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Free them from the hand of the wicked. They do not know, nor do they understand. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are unstable. I said you are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. But you shall die like mere men, and fall like one of the princes. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all nations. In Isaiah 58:12, and those from among you shall build the old waste places. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations, and you shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to dwell in. So those are our foundational texts. We've been talking about specifically what it means to be Elohim in the earth, to be those who rebuild, raise, repair, and restore. My sermon title for today would be Restorer of the Way. Restorer of the Way. Hashtag He Had Been. Hashtag I Got Now. Hashtag Who Got Next. Hashtag It's All About You. Hashtag It's Not About You. Hashtag Eternity in Their Hearts. And I'm going to specifically focus around one statement that our apostle made. He started a few weeks ago asking us, what did Jesus have to rebuild? Jesus had to rebuild a generation of people who were passionate about their own desires. What did Jesus have to raise? He had to raise a generation of people who had strayed away from generational thought. What did Jesus have to repair? He had to repair a generation of people who were broken and did not know it. What did Jesus have to restore? A generation of people who were living by other deities and had forgotten who they were. Jesus had to reset eternity in our hearts. So my automatic train of thought would be, what is eternity? Let's define it. Eternity is the quality or state of being eternal, infinite in time, the state after death, immortality, a seemingly endless or immeasurable amount of time. Perpetuity, enduring, lasting, permanent, everlasting. Long life, timeless, characterized by abiding fellowship with God, continued without intermission. You've heard me say this before, but the Bible is one story. It's one message, one narration from the eternal perspective, the timeless perspective, the everlasting perspective. So much so that we created an acronym to represent each letter. Basic instructions before leaving earth. The Bible. Since the beginning of time, God has always been concerned about generations, family, eternity, perpetuity, the everlasting. Which is why He gave the command to Adam from the beginning to rule, subdue, be fruitful, and multiply. And oftentimes in the Bible, the basic instructions before leaving earth his story, his history, God would introduce himself to someone new in the eternal continuum. And then he would give that individual his track record. He would introduce himself. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Mm-hmm. Just to prove that he was the God of generations. He was the everlasting God. He was the God of perpetuity. Mm-hmm. Side note, just because it's new to you doesn't mean it's new to God.
Come on.
He has lived through it all. Ecclesiastes 1:9 says, there's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
That's what the word of life states. So God has lived through a pandemic before.
Huh.
Treason in his own house.
Huh.
Cosmic and natural disasters.
Right.
Etc. And he does not change.
Right.
Neither do devils.
Huh.
And they cannot change because they were made by the one who is unchanging.
Come on, sir.
After God introduces himself / superimposes himself on someone in his story, he then gives them a set of instructions. Go here, do this, say this, function this way. Moses, for example, received heaven's entire kingdom schematic in the form of commandments. And then God instructed the Israelites to write those schematics, those commands down everywhere. Mm-hmm. He specifically instructed them to make them like frontlet on their eyes. Mm-hmm. Recite them often. Make them into songs, curriculum, stories, etc. Why? What was the point of the 10 commandments? Let's revisit them real quick. Exodus 20. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of bondage. You shall not have any other gods before me. You shall not make yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven or above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the 3rd and 4th generations of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands to those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Mm-hmm. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. So, the 10 Commandments, what was the point? Was it so that we could have a bunch of rules that we could follow that would give us the abundant life on earth? No. The point of the commandments was about preparing you for life in heaven with him. Mm-hmm. In eternity, in the everlasting, in the perpetual, there is only one God. There's no other gods. There's no stealing. There's no adultery. There's no murder. There's no lying. There's no cheating. We understand this, etc. Isn't that what we get excited about? The thought of eternity, going to heaven. Isn't that what we sing about? Ain't nobody crying. Ain't nobody worrying. BB and CC. I'm going up yonder. when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. The thought of eternity excites us. Jesus, at a young age, demonstrated an eternal awareness, an eternal perspective, even at a young age. At the age of 12, he told his parents, I need to be about my Father's business.
Mm-hmm.
He had a profound understanding of identity. As we've been hearing, identity is everything. You've also heard our apostle highlight the Gospel of John, specifically because of the descension, ascension motif. Jesus repeated this phrase over and over again. I came from the Father, I'm going back to the Father. I came from the Father, I'm going back to the Father. So since we are his offspring, we can make this phrase repeat after me. I came from eternity, I'm going back to eternity. Say it again. I came from eternity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going back to eternity.
Yes.
Jesus did not make sense to his disciples. He would often walk around making statements such as the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Or things such as Matthew 13:44. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and hid. And for the joy, he goes over and sells all that he has and buys that field. Then we can surmise that some of the people following Jesus had a lot to say in the meeting after the meeting. What is this dude talking about? He's off, yo. What kingdom is he talking about? Doesn't he understand we're under the Roman Empire? Doesn't he understand we have to pay Pilate and Caesar, pay taxes? I thought he was the Messiah. I thought the Messiah of the Israelites was going to restore the Israelites to the throne. They, like much of us today, were concerned about that they are now. They were trying to have temporal conversations with an eternal being.
Right.
Are you guilty of having temporal conversation with an eternal being? God, what about this stuff? God, what about the pandemic? God, what about 2020 and 2021? We have to have an eternal perspective, being the offspring of the Godhead. And Jesus consistently maintained his eternal perspective. A profound example of this is John chapter 18, verses 33 through 38. His conversation with Pilate highlights this truth. But why is this viewpoint so important? Because without the eternal perspective, we stray away from the base and basis that was established before the foundation of the world. John 1:1 says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him, nothing was made. And without him, nothing was made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. So who was the Word? Jesus. He is the foundation. He is AKA the base and the basis from which all things were created. So when we stray away from that foundation, when we stray away from Jesus, when we stray away, we flounder in our focus. What is here and now appears to be the only thing that matters.
Right.
And then there's a loss of concern for those who follow. Jesus understood and acknowledged those who paved the way before him. And he knew who would come after him. In fact, Christians were called people of the way.
True.
We weren't called Christians in the beginning. We were called people of the way. And the word way is mentioned 608 times in the Bible. I think that word is important. God has a way. let's define what way is. Way is a road, a path, a course to travel, room, space, freedom of movement, a course of life, habits of life, as regard to moral, ethical, or spiritual choices. The manner in which something occurs in this direction, a course of life, completely to a conclusion, a course of action, opportunity, capability, the fact of doing something or doing as one pleases, a possible decision, an action or an outcome, possibility, feature, respect, a condition, a state. So, there is a road, there is a path, a course of travel, room, space, freedom of movement. Also figuratively and literally, course of life, habits of life as regards to moral and ethical spiritual choices. A manner in which something occurs in heaven. Jesus himself being the way, the truth, and the life. That path, that road, which leads to eternity, which leads to the everlasting, the perpetual, goes through him. And if we are going to make it there, we have to follow that direction. If we're going to rebuild and raise and repair and restore eternity in the hearts of people, Psalms 82, how long will you judge unjustly? We have to do things the King's way. We can't do it a different way. What is the King's way? I'm glad you asked. The Bible has a profound analysis of what the King's way is. And there are specific books that I've come to enjoy that I did not enjoy previously. 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles. They're great books. For the sake of the context of today's discussion, it will help enhance your understanding. So I would encourage you to go read those. But I want to highlight two passages specifically in Chronicles. The first one is 2nd Chronicles chapter 28, verses 1 through 5. And Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. And he did not do what was right in the sight of the Lord, as his father David had done. For he walked in the ways of the king of Israel's and made molded images of Baals. He burned incense in the valley of the son of Hinnom and burned his children in the fire,
My God.
according to the abominations of the nations whom the Lord had cast out before the children of Israel. And he sacrificed and burned incense on the high places, on the hills, and under every green tree. Therefore, the Lord his God delivered him into the hand of the king of Syria. They defeated him and carried away a great multitude of them as captives and brought them to Damascus. Then he was also delivered into the hand of the kings of Israel, who defeated him with a great slaughter. The other passage I'm going to read is 2nd Chronicles chapter 14. So Abijah rested with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David. Then Asa, his son, reigned in his place. In his days, the land was quiet for 10 years. Asa did what was good and right in the eyes of the Lord his God. For he removed altars of the foreign gods and the high places, and broke down the sacred pillars and cut down the wooden images. He commanded Judah to seek the Lord God of their fathers and to absorb the law and the commandments. There they go again. He also removed the high places and the incense altars from all cities of Judah. And the kingdom was quiet under him. For he built fortified cities in Judah, for the land had rest. He had no war in those years, because the Lord had given him rest. Therefore, he said to Judah, let us build the cities and make walls around them, and towers and gates and bars, while the land is yet before us. Because we have sought the Lord our God, we have sought him, he has given us rest on every side. So they built and prospered. In order for us to rebuild, raise and restore, and repair, there are 3 R's that we need to do. The first R we need to do is reverence. First R for us to rebuild, raise, restore, repair is reverence. Reverence means to honor, to respect, felt or shown, deference, especially profound, adoring, awed, a gesture of respect, such as to bow, the state of being revered, one held in reverence. Used to be title for a clergyman, used to reverence clergymen, to stand in awe of, to fear, to be afraid, to perceive, to watch out for. Notice the juxtaposition between the 2 passages. One king revered and served and awed and respected Baal. The other awed and revered and respected God. They were both kings. They both ruled. They both had authority. Both had power. Both had influence. And each of their levels of reverence led to 2 completely different results. One king had peace and prosperity. The other had utter destruction, desolation, and demolishment. Isn't that where the church and society is today? Isn't that what we are experiencing? I would ask, what are we revering? What are we reverencing? I remember a day that those who acknowledged and knew and were aware of the life that they were living, and it wasn't necessarily correct, when they would come upon a building, a church facility, they would cross the street.
Truth.
Because they knew they weren't living right. But they had enough reverence not to walk in front of that facility that represented God. I remember a day when children TV shows didn't show lewdness, didn't show blood or gore or even kissing scenes.
Right.
I remember a day, it was also a sign of disrespect that as a child you called an adult by their first name.
Come on, sir.
Those are just a few examples of how reverence, lack of reverence, has manifested itself in the life, in the culture, in our current time. The other R, in order to rebuild, raise, restore, and repair, is to rehearse, to give an account, to go over and over and over again, literally to rake over, to drag, to trail, to practice, to play, to participate, to repeat, relate, enumerate. Again, in the passages, notice in the text, King Asa said, let us, that's a call to recite, to revisit, to remind, to replay, to retweet, repost, relay. And as a result, God gave him peace and prosperity and perpetuity and perpetuation.
That's good.
The other king, choosing to recite, retweet, repost, replay orders from another deity, as a result was given into the hands of his enemies for the purpose of destruction.
Wow.
For slavery.
Yeah.
For the removal of his generations.
Yeah.
God has always cared about succession, but only when you do things his way.
Come on, sir.
I'll say that again. God has always cared about succession, but only when things are done his way,
Mm-hmm.
his path, his direction. The last R, in order to rebuild, raise, restore, and repair, is to renew.
Renew.
To make like new, to restore, to refresh in vigor or perfection and in strength. To regenerate, to rebuild, to revive, to replenish, to resume, to replace, to grant or obtain extension, like a loan, renew a library book.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it in those texts. 1 King, the good king, replenished, revived, regenerated. It said that they will seek and serve God. He rebuilt the old waste places. He regenerated, replenished those temples, those places of worship. And when King Asa renewed a passion for God, his things, and his ways, the kingdom flourished.
Yeah.
They had peace on every side for 10 years, it said. God gave them peace.
Mm-hmm.
Gave them peace. And when the poor king, bad king, followed in the ways of the kings of Israel, notice that statement, the ways of the kings of Israel, that kingdom was ravished. It specifically says God gave them into the hands of his enemies.
Yeah.
Ephesians 4:18 through 24 gives us the template for what we are supposed to do in order to renew our mind. We know the verse. We can quote it. Ephesians 18:23, 4:23. And be renewed in the spirit of our mind.
Mm-hmm.
Renewal is for replenishing. It's to repeat, to revive, to resume. And by revering, rehearsing, and renewing God's course, such as a series of actions or sequence of events, leading in a direction towards an objective, which is eternity, we can rebuild, restore, repair, and raise the foundations and streets to dwell in.
Yeah.
When we do not do things according to that course, things stay out of course and we die like mere men. As it says in the text in Psalms 82. 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles are powerful, thorough documentations of the result of what corrupting a generation looks like versus correcting a generation looks like. Our apostle said it a couple weeks ago. If you want to corrupt a nation, all you have to do is corrupt one generation.
Yeah.
If you want to correct a nation, all you have to do is correct one generation. So we can surmise that all it takes is one.
Yeah.
Hashtag, it's all about you. Hashtag, it's not about you. Hashtag, eternity in your heart. He had then.
Yeah.
I got now.
Yeah.
Who's got next?
My mind.
Let's make these confessions all out. This is who God made us to be. This is who I am. I am made in the image of God.
I am made in the image of God.
I'm designed by the God who made me.
I'm designed by the God who made me.
The God who made me is with me.
The God who made me is with me.
The God who made me is in me.
The God who made me is in me.
I am liberated from the law of sin and death.
I am liberated from the law of sin and death.
I do not live according to the flesh.
I do not live according to the flesh.
What is natural, seeable, tangible, and temporal.
What is natural, seeable, tangible, and temporal.
I live according to the Spirit of God.
I live according to the Spirit of God.
What is spiritual, invisible, intangible, and eternal.
What is spiritual, invisible, intangible, and eternal.
And this is how I function. I'm God's representative in the earth.
I am God's representative in the earth.
I am filled with the power of God to represent him in the earth.
I am filled with the power of God to represent him in the earth.
I am responsible for God's stuff in the earth.
I am responsible for God's stuff in the earth.
I am the authority of God in the earth.
I am the authority of God in the earth.
I am God in the earth.
I am God in the earth.
And these last two, I would like you to repeat them for the next 7 days, every day. When you wake up in the morning, I want you to say to yourself, I am God's answer in the earth.
I am God's answer in the earth.
And I am the corrector of this generation.
I am the corrector of this generation.
I would encourage you just to continue making those confessions each and every day for the next 7 days, and you'll be profound in what will transpire in your life, and a shift in your perspective to understand the everlasting and not focus on the ever passing. Go forth and be powerful. God bless you.